Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode with core engineers and consultants. So today, Soham and I, we will be talking about is structural engineering career fit for you? So as we all know, Soham is a practicing structural engineer in Canada, and he also did his master's in structural engineering from Canada, from one of the Canadian universities. So Soham, let's go with this topic. So who do you think is should be the right candidate to pursue structural engineering?
Right. So thank you so much, Santho, for having me. So basically, so after grade 12, so I think the students who are interested in maths and physics, especially mechanics, I think they would be the ideal candidate. And at the same time, people who are really interested and motivated to build something, right? Because like civil engineers are basically people who build all the large infrastructures, right? Infrastructures such as bridges, dams, and a lot of other infrastructure, right? So people who are interested in, or who are motivated to see their design, coming to reality, right? So let's say, like, for example, like when I was growing up, I used to watch a lot of, documentaries about like mega structures, right? All those, Golden Gate Bridge, or let's say the biggest dam like Hoover Dam, or structures like that. And those things made me interested in pursuing a career related to those fields, right? And so I think, like, firstly, people should be interested to like pursue engineering, know like different sort of careers that are available to them, and be interested in maths and physics, like mechanics part of physics, and at the same time be interested in building stuff and seeing their structures to reality, right? Something close to that. Yeah.
Great, great. No, very aptly said. So you see the mathematics and mechanics. So those are the most important topics that students should be interested in. And then if you are interested in a grade 12, you can go for first you have to go for civil engineering, and then you can eventually pursue a degree in
Yeah.
structural engineering and then
Yeah.
become a structural engineer. Great.
Even like,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt,
Hmm.
but even like without doing any specialization, like once someone graduate in civil engineering, they can choose different career, right? And if
Hmm.
people are interested in structural engineering, they can right away go into a career in structural engineering, right? So they don't have to do a specialization, but it's an optional thing, right?
Right, right. Great, great point. Coming back to your experience in Canada, because we all know that you are a structural engineering in Canada right now. So
Right.
let's talk about somebody who is interested to practice a structural engineering in Canada. So what are his first step? What licenses should he opt for before practicing structural engineering?
Right. So to pursue structural engineering in Canada is like very similar to like pursuing structural engineering anywhere else. But eventually, like a person who is working in design should be aiming to have their license, which is
Hmm.
a PEng license, a professional engineer license. So the criteria for a professional engineering license is to have 4 years of like verifiable engineering experience, and on top of that, there are their like curriculum has to be accredited. So
Hmm.
usually the way the Canadian education system works is all their engineering program is accredited by a board, right? So basically they review the curriculum and they make sure that that is as per the requirements of the board, right? And but people who are coming from other countries, their curriculum may not be accredited. So the
Right.
first step would be to get their education, their undergrad accredited, like uh, basically to send their documentation to PEO, and they check the equivalency. So they have to send basically a course outline of the courses that you have pursued in your undergrad, and they basically compare with the Canadian curriculum, and they check whether they match or not, right? And
Hmm.
in case there is some area which the PEO, or so PEO is Professional Engineers Ontario, and there are professional engineers from all different provinces, right? So each
Hmm.
province has their licensing system. So I'm just talking
Hmm.
about PEO, but it would be very similar to, let's say, Alberta or British Columbia, or anywhere else, right? So yeah, so basically if they see some areas that need to be worked on, So they usually give some confirmatory examinations. So those areas they have to pass those examinations. So let's say, for example, somebody may think that the structural analysis curriculum is not very similar, so they would ask for a confirmatory test in structural analysis. And usually they give 3 subjects. If they give a like confirmatory examination, they would usually give 3 subjects. So basically 3 undergrad subjects, and if they pass, then that's fine. The education part is done. And in certain instances where they are not finding equivalency at all, they may ask for a lot more examination, and so that would take a lot more effort to get those examination passed. But usually like 90% of the time they don't, unless there is a lot of unless they're not able to assess anything in the outline. So it is suggested to be like diligently prepare the curriculum of whichever college somebody who is an international student has taken, and be a bit more like descriptive on what they have learned. So that's one thing. And then there is an ethics and law and ethics examination, which is basically all the practices and what kind of laws are there, and what kind of practices and ethics that is governed in this engineering field, right? And what it means to be a professional engineer, what are the liabilities, right? So all these things are taught, and they are tested on whether you have the knowledge or not. So those are the 2 examinations. And then usually those experiences have to be written down. They have to be documented, and you need to have somebody who is your supervisor or someone as a reference. So they would usually call those references and verify whether whatever you have claimed is correct or not. So for each experience they would need at least one person who can verify those experiences. And until very recently, they had a mandatory 1 year of Canadian experience was a requirement, but very recently they have waived that requirement. But it is still suggested to have some Canadian experience before applying for a PEng. So usually before they used to give an EIT, and then they would go for PEng. Nowadays they have removed the EIT program, so they're saying that once you have got all the experience, then apply, and then you get the PEng, and not apply before. So they have done some recent changes. We can make a like a video on the recent changes as well. But so for now, so 4 years of like verifiable engineering experience, like accredited, like equivalent Canadian like equivalent undergrad to Canadian engineering, civil engineering. And that's all. So basically,
an ethics exam
and law and ethics exam. So those are the 3 things that are basically required for obtaining a license in Canada. And once you have the license, then you can actually call yourself an engineer. And like before that, you cannot call yourself an engineer. So if PEO finds in your LinkedIn or somewhere you're in Canada and you're calling yourself an engineer without having a license, then that is usually they can like question that, right? They can put a case against that person, right? So all these things can happen because it's basically considered as a protected title. But so as you go forward in your career, so you have to have a license after a certain point, otherwise it becomes very difficult to sustain in the job market. But initially, to get a job, you don't need to have an engineering license, at least in the entry level position, because the employers understand that they need 4 years of experience, right, to get the license. So at the entry level positions, you can get a job without a license, but then as you want to go and grow in your career, you have to get the license.
Great.
That's all.
Very well explained that PEng is very much required to be a professional structural engineer eventually. And also I think until unless you have a PEng, then you cannot stamp the drawings also, right? Only a professional engineer can stamp the drawing. So we can make a separate video on the importance of PEng and maybe the PE in United States. What is the importance of these 2 licenses? But for this video, I think you gave enough information to our audience that PEng is one of the very required criteria for a structural engineer. So okay, so let's move on about this topic. So let's say you are in Canada, and okay, we understood now what you need to do to become a structural engineer in Canada, and also we understood that you need to be good in mathematics and physics, especially the mechanics part of it. So let's now dive a little bit deeper into structural engineering in general. Like, what are the various structural engineering options available within structural engineering field, right? Because you can work even as a bridge engineer, nuclear engineer, basically designer, bridge and dam, right? You can do building structures, whatever. So
Right.
in Canada, what are the options that are available? Which do you think the job market has more potential in Canada as a structural engineer, that students should kind of, if they focus on this area, they might be more successful?
Right, right. Yeah, so yeah, basically, like in Canada also, there are like similar, as you said, there is bridges, there are, buildings like commercial buildings, residential buildings. Then we have, different dams, because Ontario is like a lot of green energy, right? So, like 40% of the energy is from actually hydroelectrics. A lot of dams are there in Ontario. A lot of energy comes from nuclear, so there are opportunity in nuclear engineering as well. There is and I think, yeah, so these are basically the major ones. So bridges, hydroelectric projects or dams, and then we have nuclear engineering, we have yeah, so I think basically these are some of the main focused areas in structural engineering in Canada, out of which I've seen a lot of people getting very interested in bridges, and there are a lot of bridge projects in India as well. Sorry, in Canada as well. There are projects in pipeline and although like those fields as well, because Canada is also an producer of gasoline. So there are layers of pipeline that are being installed. So there also structural engineers are required.
Tunnels, right?
Tunnels, but basically, pipelines are
Look.
like basically pipe, right? Like hollow steel pipes, basically, or
Hmm.
they can be different materials as well. But there are not that much involvement in structural engineering, but still, it's kind of an interdisciplinary between mechanical and structural. But there are an analysis required, stress analysis, and finite element analysis required for those as well. So yeah, these are some of the areas in Canada.
So which of them among them you think like there is more scope in Canada, or or do you think there are like more or less the scopes are equal in all these fields?
I think it kind of depends on where in Canada you are. So and what kind of what which point you are at. So right now I've seen some of the large bridge projects going on. There is always market for residential structures. So there are residential buildings, commercial buildings, industry buildings, and that area, right? There is a new market for modular construction in
Hmm.
buildings, and so that's another area. But yeah, I would say I don't think there are a lot of new dams that have been built, because it's already there. Canada has so many dams. So, but at least at this point, also there is opportunity in nuclear as well. So, yeah, I think these are the area, mostly bridges, residential properties, or not residential. I would just say like buildings, maybe residential, commercial, and then nuclear also. And there may be like one or two other like major areas which I'm not recalling right now. But yeah, but there are scopes in structural engineering in Canada.
Right, right. So great points that you kind of clarified this a little bit about the departments within structural engineering. So let's move on a little bit. So you have experience in bridge engineering as well as in nuclear power plants, right? As a structural engineer.
Right.
So you can, if you can give a little bit idea about the salary structures in Canada in a little bit. You don't have to be specific or exact, but in general, if we have 5 years, 10 years, what they can expect, and maybe in
Yeah.
20 years, 25 years, 30 years, how they expect their career to be.
Yeah.
And
So it's
just
actually
one
something.
more I think wanted to add, like, so you, if you can, then you can also add it from a bridge standpoint, bridge structural engineer, and if you can also add it from a nuclear power plant, nuclear bridge structural engineer in a nuclear power plant. So
Right.
the
Right.
compensation levels.
Yeah. So basically, I would say the starting salary would be somewhere. It actually like varies a lot between different
Hmm.
companies, right? So someone can start at 50, 55. Someone can start at 60, 65. So it actually like varies.
Hmm.
It's a little bit higher, I would say, on like in at the nuclear industry, a little bit higher on the starting salary. Um, but I think like eventually there is a good jump when someone gets a P like license, basically PEng. I would say like they can expect somewhere between 20, 30, 40% of raise. The it like all depends on the situation of the person, right, and the company. But there is scope of like negotiation of or of good or like better compensation with a license. And I don't know the like how much the cap is, because like engineers can go in like different ways, right? So someone may start as an engineer, may end up as a VP of some company, right? And that salary may go upwards of 500,000, something like that, right?
Like
And
I think somebody in VP in a nuclear power plant, I think you said someone can make also 800, 900, right? Uh,
depends, right? It all depends on the company and all. It's not like nuclear power plant, but it's basically like an industry, right? So I think any industry, uh, like whether it's a commercial building or bridges or any industry, I think VP level people make a lot of money, right? So if someone can reach at that level, they can go upwards of 500,000, right? Can be $1 million. It all depends, right? But people, so there is a sunshine list which is in Canada. So if people are interested, they can look the especially like people who are in government organization. They can look up the salary of all the people in the organization, people who are earning more than 100,000, so they can get an idea of how much people at senior level make, right? So they can get a good idea about that. So that's like pretty transparent in government companies. So sunshine list is something people can refer to.
Okay, great. You gave some insight about the salary structures in these things. So now let's talk about some of the negatives also in structural engineering. What do you think some of the negatives are as a structural engineering, and also what could be the daily, what can be a daily life of a structural engineer when they go to office? How it looks like, from a work wise front.
Yeah, I mean, it like so structural engineer, if somebody is working on a major project, then most likely that project will continue for some time. So a person may be working on one particular area for a long time, right? Maybe like a particular, because like any project is a major project, right? There are a lot of people working on the project, so the scope of every person becomes very very limited, initially at least. So that may be like one of the negatives when starting the career. They may not be like, a person may not be able to get the overall aspect of the project, but
Hmm.
eventually when the people move higher up, they would be able to grasp what's the like, what's going on in the like in the project level, right? At the level in which people make decision, how they make the decision and all that. In terms, and if someone is like working in a, so another downside may be working on something or the same thing for a long time. That may be something, but uh, there are also an upside for people who are working in smaller projects. Maybe they are able to complete a project in 6 months, 1 year, move into another project, little bit different, and they get to learn a lot of new things. So yeah, and in terms of day-to-day life, it's I think like pretty similar to any engineering personnel, right? Starting the day, having some predetermined goals or a weekly goal, a project that a person is working on, some area, some deadline, right? And they are working towards it and completing it. And yeah, I think that's all I would say. So not
And
like
from a
very much.
liability standpoint.
Liability standpoint is somebody who has a license, so they are stamping the drawings. So it means that they're taking the responsibility for whatever they are stamping, right? So whenever a structure is designed, so between the analysis and the construction, there's a design. So basically, um, in paper we kind of put what the construction should be, and they take that drawing or that document to do the construction. So and that has to be stamped by a professional engineer. So whenever somebody stamps it, they're taking the liability for it. So usually everything goes through multiple peer reviews, multiple levels of approval, multiple levels of checks. So and the organization itself is taking the responsibility at some point, right? So it is a very like secure process, but at the same time everybody has to go through, recheck their work, make sure that there are no errors, because an error in civil engineering can cost life. So that's a very big responsibility as well.
Great, great. Exactly. So, yeah, we got the idea. So, great points that you mentioned, Soham. So, let's then move to the last and final question for today. So, as a structural engineering, how is your satisfaction level? How would you rate it from 1 to 10? And if you can add some lines on it to explain.
Yeah, so I would say, as a general, perspective for any structural engineer, it's great to see, some structures that a person has designed to get into, the shape, the reality, right? To actually see whatever is in the drawing get built. That's a really good satisfaction. It's also satisfaction to see the use of the structure, right? So basically, you see an infrastructure getting used so often, and so many people use it. So all these things gives a very good level of satisfaction. And in like in any project in civil engineering, in any part of civil engineering, you will see a macroscopic use of the structure. So that is, I think, one thing that no other career option actually can match. The level of the scale of the infrastructure and the use of the infrastructure is so visible to people. So it's a very satisfying thing to see that coming into a reality. So I would say there's a lot of satisfaction in that aspect of structural engineering.
Great, great. So yeah, we got a very good insight about structural engineering from Soham. I hope many people will appreciate the details, insights that he brought to this topic. And yeah, if you are interested in mathematics, physics, mechanics, those things, and you want to see big structures building, I'm sure whatever Soham said, even the satisfaction level, the salary, everything is pretty good and decent. So yeah, thank you, Soham, again for giving time. I hope our viewers enjoyed it. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. We will bring some such useful contents for future. Thank you.